Hello, I am Marcus, a part of the Fathom dev team, and in today's video I will be going over some potential reworks that you can see in the future involving Entomb, weapons and armor, and some assorted checks throughout the game. These changes aren't concrete just yet. We're not solid on each one of them and how they're going to be implemented, but we have a couple ideas and we were excited to share it, so this is what this video is for. Jumping into Entomb first. Currently in Fathom, the way Entombs work is that by interacting with a world grave in a nondescript way, you would receive a check called an Entomb check that you would roll, and then if you succeeded or failed, depending on what the circumstance was, you may receive an Entomb that related to the skill or statistic you failed, including spell casting, which ran into some issues. Previously, in the Entomb system, Entombs were based around skills and relied on an Entomb check to receive either the blessing or curse variety of which one, and then you would randomly determine the Entomb, and then from there have to be stuck with that Entomb for a while, and the only way you could interact with that Entomb was by getting more Entombs in the same skill, which you could not really actively pursue as a player, and the fact that you could only replace it once per week rest with a different one within that same skill. So it felt like you were really stuck into the Entomb choices, and it felt like it was truly a curse most of the time on you. But it led to dissatisfaction, and it was uninteractive for a lot of players, especially with how long week rests take in general. So instead, we've changed it up so that you have more player agency, and there's more variety in what Entombs you can possibly get per playthrough, as you should be receiving a wide variety of them through the entire time. In our new system, instead of getting entombed the minute you fail the check or interacting with the strange object or artifact and instantly receiving a blessing or a curse, you would instead receive build-up. This would be a new area on your character sheet that you can mark down each time you get build-up. This represents how close your body is from spontaneously mutating. In this new system of Entomb, you would instead earn points called Entomb Buildup as you get exposed to more entombing devices in the world. For instance, the Strange Curse Relic or an Entombed Envoy and so forth. Consider it like 0 being completely free of buildup, 1 to 4 being able to mutate willingly and you have to put your mind into it, and 5 instantly causing a spontaneous mutation. So what you would do in these circumstances is that when you receive anything that would give you an Entomb in the previous system, you would mark it down on your sheet under Entomb Buildup and put up to however much Entomb buildup you got. So for instance, let's just say your character stepped into a Cursed Relic and received 2 Entomb Buildup. They would be going from 0 to 2. With that 2 then, at the next day rest, they can attempt to mutate and see which result they would get on their mutation. Let's say your buildup now reaches 2 at whichever state of the game that you are. Let's just say you step into a cursed trap and you get 2 Entomb buildup. Let's see how spending that 2 buildup can affect your character and what you would possibly get. Looking at this 2, you would select a body part to mutate as you are willingly choosing to mutate during your day rest. For this example, let's say you choose head, and then because you have 2 Entomb buildup, you would select 2 categories to mutate from. Let's just say you choose eyes and brain, for instance, as your 2 categories of mutations. You would then roll a d6 for each of these charts and see which result you would get. Let's just say for this example as well, you get option number 4 and option number 2 on brain. Between the 2 options, you can then select which Entomb to be the final result of Entomb if you choose to accept it. Let's just say it's infrared eye, so infrared eyes versus robot brain. Something stupid like that. One makes you see better in the dark, one lets you calculate stuff better. Looking at both of these options, you might be a sight-based build, a vision-based build, or you might be more calculated-based build. Let's just say you choose infrared eyes, that would be the end of the process right there, and you'd receive the associated entomb. You would receive the benefits and the drawbacks of whatever infrared eyes gives you. If instead you don't like either of these options, you can then choose to reject the entomb, essentially treating it as a disease in your body, and you can slowly get rid of it over time when your entomb buildup resets to 0. Speaking of, after this process, your entomb buildup goes to 0 no matter what it was before. This includes if you reached up to 5, which would cause a spontaneous mutate, which would go through this whole process with more randomization, allowing the DM to choose entombs that to give you, or choose something more in line with the nature of what you did last to cause the spontaneous mutation. In this system, there's a lot more choice in when you mutate and how you mutate and what you get, but there's still a level of randomness that feels like you're not just selecting what's going on to you. You're kind of still at the mercy of the world grave and having to figure out what's going on to you, and you still have to suffer the benefits and negatives of whatever mutation you get if you choose to accept it. For the next systems that we want to change, we're looking into updating weapons and armor. Specifically in weapons, we're looking to rebalance them in a way that makes all of them viable and none of them feel bad to use. Previously, certain weapons felt terrible because they had low modifiers and they had low damage, but they costed very cheaply, which made sure that you didn't use them at a certain point in the game and were useless after fresh meat tier. Instead, we're looking to make it so that all of them can be used interchangeably and more or less fit into a build identity rather than whatever you could afford at the time. It felt quite bad when you would hit somebody with 5 dice and only get 2 damage through because they had a DP1 weapon and they had DR3 or something. It made the game go a lot slower and feel a lot more clunky. So overall, we're going to make sure no weapons have lower than 2 DP or a D3. For a quick comparison on what you could see in the future, here is current shotguns in the game that is relatively fairly balanced compared to the new one that we hope to implement. As you can see, all the weapons have gone up in terms of modifiers. They have lowered in price or equalized in price, or gone up in damage. For instance, the sawed-off got an additional -2V modifier instead of -1, retained the gun fu, and has a role as being a one-handed shotgun now, instead of being the only option to choose if you were, well, broke at the start of the game. In comparison, the difference between automatic in this version versus current, it will have the same stat line for the most part, but it'll have an extra modifier on evasion and vigor. It'll have slightly lower damage, but you'll see that it dropped in price from 360 to 150. This means that you can achieve this weapon much earlier in the game, and you could even often start off with this depending on how much your DM is willing to give out at the start of a campaign. We hope that these changes overall make every weapon feel like it's useful and can fit into a thematic build that you are planning. You do not have to go for the best option that doesn't fit what you want to do because it's the only one you can afford. We're hoping to make it so all of them feel good. Moving on to armor, we've noticed that a lot of the specific damage type resistant armors felt quite terrible when you're put in a situation that doesn't utilize the damage reduction. The biggest offenders in this regard are a lot of the elemental damage types, certain necrosis and poison ones, and the difference between physical and ballistic was often felt between armors, and whenever you took the wrong one to an encounter, you felt like you just played the game wrong. And that was not something we wanted to go for. So in order to unify some of the damage reductions in armors, we're unifying the damage types overall. Specifically for physical and ballistic, they are getting changed to just being physical damage now. Your Kevlars, you won't have to worry about stab, ballistic, stab 1, stab ballistic, whatever. You are now just looking to resist physical damage. If you still want some differences between the two, there's going to be a difference between the melee defense and the range attack on upgrades, or even some unique effects that should stay in the armors. But for the most part, you won't have to trade one for the other anymore. You'll be defended against both depending on what armor you take. Additionally, necrosis and poison damage felt like they were too unique in the terms of we couldn't make armors use both of these, and when they did, it felt quite terrible. So we wanted to make sure that they're put together now so you can have just a damage type to reduce or ignore in the future. Psionic was relatively positive, so this one will be remaining unchanged. As well as there is a new addition into how armors will defend against fire, frost, caustic, and lightning damage. Those four are now considered elemental damage types. In the same way that these infusing robes here on the left resist spell damage, anything that will have a damage reduction to elemental will reduce fire, frost, caustic, and lightning by that same amount. So for a quick example, let's just say you have firefighter's armor, which has 2 physical, which will be physical ballistic now if you remember. It has 2 fire, and then it has 2 elemental. If you were to take 4 fire damage in this circumstance, you would reduce it first by the elemental one, and then by the fire one. Additionally, if you were to take just 2 lightning damage, you would reduce it by the elemental only, as it applies to all 4 of those damage types. On top of these changes to the damage reductions and elemental, we hope to rebalance armors in general to be the thing that you spend money towards changing. The last section we are looking to rework or just alter would be the checks relating to rest, dying/stabilizing, pressure, and entomb. As currently in the game, you would roll a vigor check and heal hit points back to the amount that you surpassed the rest DC by. Instead, we are most likely replacing that with quick rests that heal you 1d3 hit points and day rests that heal you 3d3. Next, dying is also being changed to no longer rely on a vigor or sanity check to avoid fatigue. Instead, you will be receiving fatigue each round you are not stabilized. But in order to compensate players, we are also buffing the action that you take to stabilize to make it so you no longer need to do a check for it and will instead just happen. For pressure, we are also looking to remove the vigor or presence check to avoid the consequences. We are just making it so that you have to be immune to those pressure environments in order to not suffer the effects, but in turn making it so that the penalty for not being immune to it is much easier to compensate for, so that you can go into these environments and suffer the drawbacks and not be completely hamstrung. Lastly, on top of the entomb rework that we have planned, there should not remain to be entomb checks, so we're just removing them flat out. No compensation needed. That is all I had in terms of potential changes that we wish to discuss with the community for now. We are looking at doing some other changes and still have internal discussions, but we'd really like to hear from you guys on what we want to change and what systems don't really feel like they're that positive, or if the game is in a great state right now. If so, leave a comment and potentially join our Discord and leave a comment there, or message us. We'd love to try and change the game to make the game better for every single player. So, yeah. See you next time, Delvers.